Alright, let's go through what we're hoping to cast up today. One of the jobs I want to do is some new way wiper covers. The ones on the Victor at the moment are just plate shim with rubber sandwiched in between. They do create a bit of stiction, so I want to go with some felt style ones that we can put into a cavity and block that up. These are the patterns that I've 3D printed. I'm actually going to have to coat them in some high build spray, putty spray. Try and get rid of all the little tiny lines in there which will grab on the sand if we do try to pull it out. I'm going to cast these in bronze and we'll see how we go. They're the shapes there, and I've actually 3D printed into that the runner system. So that's on both. So that's for the prism ways and that's for the flat ways. With these I've also created what I call blocking plates. So these save me digging out sand to create cavities. So they will go in there like so. Same with these blokes. Get them all to go. So that allows me to ram up, flip them over, still have the blocking plates inside, ram them up again, then remove the blocking plates, and then I'm left with that cavity there. So that's the plan. I'm going to do these in two different types of sand. So I'm going to do a set in green sand, and I'm also going to do a set in the petrobond sand. We'll have a look at the difference in the surface finish. Right, the other job I want to do is I've just knocked up a very rough pattern with some core prints on the end, and we're going to make up a bit of bronze stock. This is well and truly undersized for what I need and oversized for what I need. And there goes my phone, so bear with me a minute, I'll be back in a tick. Okay, we're back. So this is the bit of stock that I've made up. We're going to do that in green sand. Now what that's going to be for, I'll just flip the camera over and show you. So this is the gearbox casting for the slotting machine. And inside here we can see a very loose fitting bearing, or bush. And what they've done on this in the past is, as you can see, they've knurled it to try and get it to grip when it's being pressed in. The problem is when you do knurl, you end up with some very sharp, fragile points. Once you push it in, those fragile points just get sheared off and you're back to where you started. So not a very good method of repair. And this was just spinning in the casting. Hence we're going to make up a new bit of stock. Now, as I said, you can see that that's well and truly oversized for what I need and undersized for what I need for the core. And the reason I do that is it gives me a bit of leeway for other projects that I've got. I've got some stock here that can cover a fairly wide range. So when I was casting, we always had patterns made up and flasks rammed up ready to do stock, just rather than pouring it off into ingots. It was sometimes good just to have a bit of stock made up on hand. Alright, let's move over to where I'm working on the green sand. We're just reconditioning that. You might remember in a previous video, I'll leave a link down below, where I showed you how to mull sand without a muller. And I'll leave a link to that down in the description, how we did that. But that sand has been mulled, it has dried out, so we're just reconditioning. So let's head on over there and show you what we're doing. Alright, in here we've got the green sand that has dried out, and we're just going to recondition that. I'm just going to run that through a medium sieve. This sieve has seen a lot of work. Just a medium mesh sieve, this one. We'll do the proper screening when we're ramming up the moulds, but for what we're doing here, this is fine. Right, phone's been ringing hot. A little bit of water in it. Don't go too crazy with the water. Just get it in there and just start working it through. It doesn't take long just to start fluffing up. And if you do go too far with the water, you can always add some more of the dry stuff. So this has had the clay added to it already, and as I said, it's already been pre-mulled. Using our methodology without a muller. As I said, I'll leave a description down and a link to that video. Still looks a little bit dry. Maybe a tad more water. It's got some good grain strength in it. This is very, very old sand. I've had this for 20 years plus. I don't think we'll need to go too much more. You can see just how fluffy that is. It's very light and fluffy. Really easy to ram and get some good definition out of it too. So you really do need to mull this sand prior to make sure that you get that clay evenly consistent right throughout the sand and each grain coated in clay. I think the last time I did it was with bentonite powder, but I do prefer to use natural clays. I do have a big bucket of it, just have at the back of me there, that needs to be sieved out and graded, but I'm happy with that. Alright, I'm going to tip that off into one of my white buckets, and we're going to let that ferment for a little while. And I've got a little bit more left in that bin to go. I'll get that going, so alright, I'm happy with that. Alright, we're going to start ramming up today, a couple of patterns. We're going to do that pattern, we're going to make up some bronze stock for doing that bearing in the slaughter, and we're also going to ram up the patterns for the way slides, felt keepers on the Victor. So these are some of the tools that I used for many years when we ran the Foundry, and I haven't used these for nearly 20 years now, so it's been a long time since I've done any Foundry work. This is going to be, well, I've just finished building this probably about 12 months ago. This is going to be my new ramming up area. So I've got to put some benches in over here. And we're going to go small. When we did close up the Foundry, I did keep some of the gear. So I kept a few of the flasks, a few more down there. That was the blower we used in the cupola when we first started melting iron, and that's the blower we used for the oil burner. So I kept those too. Kept a little CO2 bottle in that 20-litre drum. You can see it's full of sodium silicate. We used to do a lot of cores in sodium silicate, and we actually used a gas bottle we hired from a local brewery that was just around the corner from us. We used to hire bottles off them. Some silicon down there that we use for our iron. A lot of temperature controllers and measuring gear for measuring the temperatures in the crucibles or in the furnaces. Amongst that's an R-type we use for the iron. We had to get it up to around 1550, 1600 degrees C, so that was very hot. Alright, let's set up and we'll ram up a couple of moulds, eh? Alright, I'm not going to show you the whole ramming process. I'm sure you've seen a lot of ramming of moulds on a lot of YouTube channels. What I do want to show you will be the gating system and the feeding system, which can make or break your castings. And it's just as important as the pattern to gate it and feed it properly to make sure you minimise the shrinkage. You try and clean the metal as much as you can through the gating system, and you minimise your shrinkage through the feeding system. Alright, let's give that a bit of a dust. and this one's graphite. Don't have to go too far overboard with it. Now I'm just going to use a medium mesh on this. Surface finish on this isn't critical because it's just going to be stock that we're going to machine down. So we'll just use that medium mesh that we use when we recondition the sand. The sand's still in good nick. It still feels good. It's got some good green strength and it's not too dry, not too wet. So I'll just get a bit of a facing sand over this. Now back in the day we used to get facing sand from company on the Dandenong Frankston Road. And the facing sand we used to get was so fine. And we'd get a couple of rubbish bins full and that would last us a couple of years just for facing sand for doing really fine intricate work in green stand. And these are our rammers. We had a number of these rammers we made up, and I also had a small air rammer. Often when you're ramming up all day long, this makes it a lot quicker and a lot easier. And we had a very large rammer for the bigger moulds we do at times, but I used a lot of air, and air is not cheap. Make sure you ram it in and get it right into the corners and around the sides. You want the sand to hold into the flask. Alright, I'm going to keep filling that up, and I'll bring you back when I've got that done and rammed up and struck off, and we'll flip it over. Okay, we've just finished ramming this one up and striking it off, so let's flip it over and have a look. That's quite good in there. Righto, so that's our other face. Now I've actually pulled this out and turned this around because I had the orientation incorrect, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. So I've given that a dust, I've given that a wipe down with the graphite. The graphite makes it really slick, but it gets everywhere. It gets into the pores of your skin, into your hair, makes a horrible mess. Now, I'm going to have to get a shifter because these pins have become quite loose, so I might be able to get them by hand actually. That's it. So I might get a shifter and I'll nip those up. I'm back in a tick. Let's give another dust off. Just slick up the sprue. Alright, so the top half we treat a little bit differently. This is where we're going to be putting our feeder system in. We're also going to be putting our sprue system in, and our gating system will also be going in as well. Now, feeders, or risers, whatever you want to call them, are there to do one thing. They're there to take scum out, but also feed the casting as it cools and shrinks. You want the casting to be drawing out of the feeder. You don't want the feeder drawing out of the casting, because you're going to end up with voids and blowholes and all sorts of other carry on. You're not going to end up with a true casting at the end of it. Up at this end, so this is going to be a feeding in. Up at this end, I'm going to put this bloke in. Now, the reason we're doing this is that once again, this is going to be a feeding system. I'm going to be feeding directly on top of the casting itself. If you have a look, we have a reduction in that area there. It's going to be a fairly easy job to cut that off and clean that out. What we're also going to do, and once again, this is horses for courses on what you're casting. I'm going to tilt this up slightly. And the reason I'm tilting that up very slightly is because I want to create a heel or a well of hot material, hot metal, down the bottom of this casting. I want that to force its way up, feed up. That's going to put all the scum at the front and at the top. And as we get to the top, hopefully the scum is going to come out, and this is also going to feed as our casting is cooling and shrinking. We're going to be running with a tapered sprue. The idea of that is we try and keep that full while we're pouring to minimise the amount of oxidisation, the air that gets entrapped and creates oxidisation on the material. These are smaller ones that I use for aluminium. Alright, let's make a start on that. I'll bring you back when I've got all this done. As I said, you guys have seen ramming with casting so many times on other YouTube channels, I'm sure. But let's bring you back when we've got this finished. Alright, we've got that rammed up. I've still got to cut in the hole for the bottom feeder. It's going to feed into our pattern, or into our cavity if you like. What I'm going to do is I need to do an extension. I need to extend the sprue system up. I also need to extend the feeding system up as well. And I do these with these pipe sections. I know there's a lot of pundits who think, no, you don't need to do this. But for me, it gives a little bit more head pressure and gives me a little bit more time to try and get that sprue filled fully, so we can minimise that oxidisation with air entrapment. So I'm going to ram this up now, then we'll pull the sprue out, take that away, that will go back in again, and we're ready to do our casting. Right, that's our sprue. Once they're complete, we can remove that. We can remove that. Tuck it off to one side. Alright, let's get this bloke out. Let's split it. Alright. So the pattern remained in the second half. We're going to leave that in there. Alright, so the second thing I'll do now is I'm just going to cut that nice big feeder in just here. We'll transfer that down and we can start putting the gating system in. But that's come up really, really nice. Very nice surface finish on that, so I'm happy with that. Alright, we'll close this up now. So this is where our sprue is. So we've created a bit of a well in the bottom there. We've also created a well for that feeder to get as much material in there as we can, and then our runner into the cavity. Now I've made that a bit too big. I should have made that a little bit smaller to help choke that off, but anyway, it is what it is. We'll leave it as it is. You'll also notice I've got some loose stuff that I've put along here. A little bit jagged along the edge here, and we're fairly close to the end of the box. The last thing I want to do is have it blowing out. So I'll put just a bit of loose sand in there to create a seal. It'll compress down and take up any irregularities that we've got. Alright, let's close it up. Okay. Alright. Done. Alright, I'm just going to create some more extenders up off these points here, and it'll be ready to pour. And we'll bring you back when we're ready to do that. Right, so we're going to start doing these way wiper keepers that are going to hold the felt for the Victor lathe. So I've got them laid out here, I've dusted them off a little bit. You can see the blocking plates that I've got in here, and you'll see what the purpose of those are a little bit later. So we are going to ram those up. It stops the sand going into the cavity, and then we can remove them the second time round when we ram up the other side. This is going to be the cope, so we're going to be asked about a little bit on that. So this will be the cope. As far as feeding goes, so I'm going to put a sprue just here to feed in, put a riser on either end, and I'm going to have to put some breathing holes into the sand because we are going to end up with this airlock out. So I need somewhere to go. I'm not too sure about the permeability of the sand, so we'll just make sure we cover ourselves. But this man will have maybe have some little shrinkage spots on the outside faces that you're going to see, but for what it is, it'll give us a decent casting. Alright, so this one here we're going to be doing it in petrobond. So Well, it's not actually petrobond, it's called K-bond. So it's made up with 2-stroke oil, 2-stroke motorbike oil, bentone, which is an activated clay. It's used in the makeup industry, or used for makeup, used as a paint thickener as well, and we activate that with isopropyl alcohol is when we mull it, and as soon as the isopropyl alcohol gets added to it and it starts mulled, you can actually see the stuff actually moving. It's like it's got a life of its own, but you get very, very fine finishes out of it. So that's petrobond. All right, now I've got a tin over here, you can't see. I mulled this up over 15-20 years ago, and I haven't touched it since. So we'll see how that goes. It looks quite good actually. It's been well sealed up. Now this stuff does stink a little bit when you are casting with it, because of the oil burn off, but you can see how that is. It's almost like plasticine, Play-Doh, the way that it is. But we'll sift in some facing sand onto these parts first, just with this finer sieve. Bit of fly wire mesh actually. And it's funny when you are casting, running a little bit of Foundry, all the little jigs that you make up to assist you, so you don't have to spend too much money. Alright, let's go alright. Probably didn't really need to put the facing sand down on this. This is, as I said, this stuff is really good. It's held its body really well over the time. And we'll compare this with the other two that I'm going to do, which we'll do in the green sand. We'll compare the finish between the two. The thing with this stuff is that with the oil in it, the oil burns off as soon as the hot metal hits it and creates a gas front against the face of the sand. It tends to cushion a little bit the molten metal going up into it. And I have pulled these out and they're almost a mirror finish. So that's going right. Now you can use this as a facing sand over the top of green sand, but you don't tend to recover it again. And, well, as I said, it's not the cheapest stuff to make. Righto, got that struck off. We will flip this over now and let's have a look at it. Ah, isn't that nice? They just fell out. So that tells me one thing, I got the draft spot on with that. Alright, let's get these jiggers back in again. We're going to remove the blocking plates. Tended to move a little bit, so great thing with this particular sand is that it's very forgiving. And as I said, it's like working with plasticine or Play-Doh. Right, let's get our top section on. Dust it off. You can see what the blocking plates have done. They've blocked out the sand filling those cavities. And I've seen a lot of blokes when they're casting will fill those up and then dig the cavities out afterwards, but you know, 3D printing, it takes no time at all to do that type of job with a blocking plate. Alright, let's get her rammed up. Alright, moment of truth. Let's see how good this pattern is. Let's see if it pulls out okay. Straight up. Oh yeah. Have a look at that. Everything intact. Alright, you can see how that looks. That pulled out extremely cleanly. I was really concerned about these little corner pieces around here and that wedge section in there. But as you can see, there was no issue whatsoever with that. And that's our patterns remaining inside the sand, so I'll just wrap those and pull those out. But like I said, this sand is extremely forgiving and very, very easy to work with. I find green sand for this fine stuff is going to be a lot harder. But anyway, we'll round the second lot up in the green sand and we'll see how that looks. Alright guys, sorry about that, I didn't show you the running system I put into this. So we'll do a little bit of the after fact. So this is my sprue that I'm pouring into. Now if you have a look, I've actually done that a little bit higher, and the reason I've done that is so I've got better access with my crucible into this and a much larger target area. As you know guys, we need a bigger target area. Right, so I've got a feeder here which is going to be right there, and I've got two nice feeders at the end which come up off these two sections here. And as I said, also I've punched through breathers just so we can let those gases escape in that area that possibly would get airlocked. I hope the sand is permeable enough that we wouldn't have to, but let's just cover ourselves anyway. Alright, so that's the one done in petrobond. I'll do the other one in green sand and I'll bring you back when we're ready to take those patterns out, and we'll just see how they look compared to the petrobond sand. Alright, I've just started sieving up the green sand for these way wiper keepers. And one thing, there is a difference between the green sand and the petrobond sand. This sieves so much easier. It does run through the sieve much freer. Let's give it a reasonably good facing sand. I'm going to start introducing sand as is. Right, let's flip it over and see how we go. One of the blocking plates fell out, which is fine. Alright, it's not too bad. Not too bad at all. Let's get the blocking plates out first. Alright. Alright, I'll round this side up. We'll bring you back when we're going to split the box, and we'll see how we go with those pinch points in those corners with the green sand. Alright, moment of truth. Let's split the box and see how we go. Alright, let's see where we've got it caught up in here. And those pinch points I talked about, you can see where it's gotten caught up. So worried about these spots. These spots here are a bit of a pain. Now I can set them up in the mill and take those out. I'm going to try and do a little bit of a repair on it, get it a little bit better than what it is now, and we'll see how we go. Alright, I'll bring you back when I've had a crack at trying to fix up some of this. Maybe successful, it maybe not. Alright, so this one's a total fail. When I went to cut the riser in, I've actually knocked the edges off, which is a pain. Now doing this again, I would actually flip this upside down to try and keep the lower half intact and break it away from the upper half. And what I would do is pre-wrap that before I put the two halves together and round up the top half again. So let's put this back in the bucket and let's give it another go. That's what casting's all about, I guess. Alrighty, now I'll confess, this is the third time I've done this. The last time I did it, I forgot to put the blocking plates in, and it made an absolute mess. So we've got them in this time, and we'll take them out. And that's the problem when you start getting a bit tired. I've been at this on and off all day. I went and played a round of 18 holes with my son this afternoon, and it was quite warm, so I'm getting a little bit tired, and obviously I'm making mistakes. Now I can tell you, you don't want to be making mistakes when you're pouring the hot metal. You've got to be in the right frame of mind, because mistakes with molten metal can be absolute disastrous. I want these to fall, or this half to fall out of the sand, and the other half to stay in the sand. Right, so they're quite loose in the sand now. And what we're going to do next time is we're going to flip this upside down, and we're going to pull this section out first. And I'm hoping that these will stay behind, and we can wrap these again and make sure we get these intricate bits out. But let's see how we go. Righto, let's roll this over and see if this plan works. I striked it off a little bit, it was a little bit rocky and rolly. Just a bit of scrap metal I found for a striker. I used to use a big hacksaw blade, one of the big power hacksaw blades at the teeth, and going through the teeth first made it a lot easier to remove, and finished off the other side. Alright, let's see what happens. Bugger. Bugger. I did really well, except for that last little bit. That worked the way I wanted it to work. Alright guys, that's our green sand wave wiper cover mould done. I haven't put a riser in the middle. I've cut quite a deep gating system in here on top and bottom, just to try and feed that a little bit better. We've obviously got our risers on either end. That's our petrobond wave wiper cover set up over there, and that's our bearing bronze that we're going to be casting tomorrow, hopefully. So it's 9:30 now. I've just looked up and yep, it's getting dark outside. So I'm tired of making silly mistakes. As I said, this is not the frame of mind that you want to be in when you're casting hot metal. Alright. Well, hopefully a good result in the end. Alright guys, we'll see you tomorrow, and hopefully we'll get some decent castings.